Hi, I'm Robin, English teacher with Core Languages, and today I'm standing next to a sculpture. I want to add more information to the sentence, so let me try again. I'm standing next to a sculpture, which is located at Riverfront Park in North Charleston. Now I've added more information to this sentence, which means I used an additional clause. I started with a main clause. I'm standing next to a sculpture. This clause by itself makes perfect sense on its own. I could say it's independent, or it is an independent clause. But I added more information. I added, which is located at Riverfront Park. This clause cannot stand on its own. I could say it depends on the main clause or the dependent clause. It's a dependent clause. In English, there are different kinds of clauses, but we need to understand how to put them together and when to put them together. In today's video, I'm going to show you the different clauses in English. So the next time you want to add information to the statue that you're standing next to, you can formulate a perfect English sentence.
Clauses. There are four types of clauses in the English language. A main clause or an independent clause is a clause that can stand alone as a complete sentence. For example, Ben is talking to a friend. Ben is the subject of the sentence. Is talking is the verb, and to a friend is the predicate. This sentence makes perfect sense by itself. A subordinate clause is a clause that is connected to the main clause by use of a subordinating conjunction, and it cannot stand by itself. For example, Ben is talking to a friend because they are planning a trip. In this example, Ben is talking to a friend is the independent clause or the main clause, and because they are planning a trip is the subordinate clause. Because is the subordinating conjunction, and the subordinate clause, because they are planning a trip, cannot stand by itself. It wouldn't make sense. A relative clause is a clause that refers to an antecedent in the main clause. For example, Ben is talking to a friend whom he has known for years. Whom he has known for years is a relative clause, and a relative clause needs a relative pronoun. In this example, whom. Whom refers to an antecedent in the main clause. In this example, friend. A noun clause is a clause that stands in for a noun. For example, Ben is talking to whoever he's going on a trip with. The entire clause whoever he's going on a trip with stands in for a noun. Subordinate clauses are dependent clauses. Main clauses are independent clauses. This means that subordinate clauses cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. They can be found at the beginning of a sentence, but then we need to use a comma to separate the main clause and the subordinate clause. Or they can also follow the main clause, in which case no comma is needed. For example, although the sun is shining, it is supposed to rain today. Although the sun is shining is the subordinate clause. Although is the subordinating conjunction, and we separated the main clause and the subordinate clause with a comma. We are staying home because we are trying to save money. This example starts with the main clause, so we do not need to use a comma. Because we are trying to save money is the subordinate clause, and because is the subordinating conjunction. Birds fly south once the cool autumn weather arrives. This sentence also starts with the main clause, so we omit the comma. Once the cool autumn weather arrives is the subordinate clause, and once is the subordinating conjunction. There are many subordinating conjunctions, and it is important to remember that these can only be found at the beginning of a subordinate clause. There are one-word conjunctions such as after, although, as, because, before, if, once, since, so, that, until, when, while. There are also multiple word conjunctions. For example, as long as soon as, except that, in order that, provided that, so as to. And there are also conjunctions with adverbs. For example, ever since, just as, just when, only if, right before, simply because. Relative clauses are also dependent clauses because they cannot stand by themselves. A relative clause has a relative pronoun, which refers to a noun or a pronoun, which is considered the antecedent in the previous part of the sentence or in the main clause. For example, I visited Dallas, where I used to live. Where in this case refers to the antecedent Dallas. She asked me a question which I couldn't answer. Which refers to a question. They saw someone with whom they spoke yesterday. Whom refers to someone. Just as subordinating conjunctions, relative pronouns also are only found at the beginning of a relative clause. Here are some examples of relative pronouns. That, when, where, which, who, whom, whose, and why. Relative pronouns can also be used in combination with prepositions. At which, for whom, for which, in which, on which, with whom. It is important to note that the relative pronoun that is only used for people, animals, or things in informal spoken English. That cannot be used for the non-defining relative pronoun which. Noun clauses are also dependent clauses, which means they cannot stand by themselves. They're typically introduced by a question word, such as why, who, when, which, how, and so on. Noun clauses can be subjects, direct or indirect objects, objects of prepositions, or subject complements. For example, what I know is not enough. This noun clause is the subject of the sentence. He told us what we needed to know. This noun clause is the direct object of the sentence. My concern was that no one was listening. This noun clause is a subject complement. Look at the following two examples and try to choose one of the subordinating conjunctions to connect the main clause with the subordinate clause. She learned to talk. She has been more vocal. This sentence starts with a subordinate clause. The conjunction that makes the most sense is ever since. Ever since she learned to talk, she has been more vocal. She has been more vocal is the main clause. And how about this example? I can relax. We get to Hawaii. The conjunction that makes most sense is once. I can relax once we get to Hawaii. This sentence starts with the main clause, so no comma is needed. Look at this example and try to choose the subordinating conjunction that makes the most sense. I will call you as soon as I can, or I will call you soon I can. The correct sentence is, I will call you as soon as I can. This sentence also starts with the main clause, so no comma is needed. And what about this sentence? I think as everything will be okay, or I think that everything will be okay. The correct sentence would be, I think that everything will be okay. This sentence also starts with the main clause, which in this case is only I think, and no comma is needed. Here's an example of a sentence with a relative clause. Try to choose the correct relative pronoun to complete it. I live in Los Angeles, where many films are produced, or in many films are produced. The correct relative pronoun is where, and it refers to the antecedent Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles, where many films are produced. Here's another example of a sentence with a relative clause. Try to choose the correct relative pronoun. Broccoli is a vegetable, what he doesn't like to eat, or which he doesn't like to eat. The correct sentence is, broccoli is a vegetable, which he doesn't like to eat. The relative pronoun which refers to the antecedent vegetable.
Thank you for watching. I hope you now have a better understanding of the different kinds of clauses in the English language. As always, if you have more questions, feel free to comment, or if you're interested in joining one of our courses with a live instructor, feel free to message us directly. I look forward to seeing you in our next class.